Welcome to Rare by Nature, rare bottles from the whiskey shop. My name is Stuart Brown, National Whiskey Consultant for Johnnie Walker and the Classic Malts. And before we get into the Rare by Nature, I want to talk a little bit about rare malts. Now, rare malts were actually released back in about 1995. Special releases, though, started in 2001. Now, everything that we're going to be trying here today is cask strength and natural coloring, so do remember to please enjoy responsibly. Now, Rare by Nature was put together by Dr. Craig Wilson. He's a chemist, biologist, chef, and master blender. He's put together pretty much an encore selection, distilleries that were his favorite distilleries across Scotland, and taking a look at them in a new light, distinctive maturations and rare finishes. So welcome to Rare by Nature by Dr. Craig Wilson. Rare by Nature is a collection of 8 different single malt distilleries with very unique releases. 4 we're going to take a really good look at, but the other 4 we'll take a look at right now. Dalwhinnie Distillery, established back in 1897. Now, this is a Dalwhinnie 30-year-old. We had a 25-year-old come out a few years ago. This particular liquid was actually distilled back in 1989. At 51.9% ABV, put in refill hogshead barrels, one thing you should look at is the herbal, which is going to be indicative to that of Dalwhinnie, but look for the butterscotch undertone and a little creaminess with a little pepper. That will be Dalwhinnie 30-year-old. The Cardew Distillery, established back in 1824, and the very first distillery ever started by a woman by the name of Helen Cumming. Now, she and her daughter-in-law, Elizabeth, formed this wonderful distillery that created incredible liquids in Speyside. What we're going to be looking at is Cardew 11, distilled back in 2008. Alcohol volume, 56%, using new and ex-bourbon barrels. The wonderful thing about Cardew, and especially the Cardew 11, is its juicy fruit type of flavor profiles. Look for a little bit of green apple, pineapple, the sweetness that will make up Cardew. That is going to be Cardew 11. The Mortlach Distillery, established back in 1823, the Beast of Dufftown. The reason why it's called the Beast of Dufftown is because it uses 2.81 distillation rate. It allows that distillant to be filled up a little bit higher on the wash still to give it that beefier taste. And we are using that wee witchy, that 2.81 distillation rate, you get the Beast of Dufftown. What we're going to look at is Mortlach 21, distilled back in 1999. The ABV level, 56.9% ABV. It uses Pedro Jimenez Oloroso Sherry Oak. So look for the dried, rich fruit flavor, citrusy undertones, chili pepper, the long and fruited flavor profile. That is Mortlach 21. Pittivig, a distillery established back in 1975, closed in 1993, destroyed in 2002. Now, if I gave you the address of the distillery, you mapped it, there wouldn't be anything there. The only thing that survived from this distillery were the barrels of spirit, hence called a ghost distillery. Now, we had a Pittivig 25-year-old years ago. Then there was a 28-year-old. And now we have a Pittivig 30-year-old. Using first refilled bourbon barrels with an ABV level of 50.8% alcohol, the wonderful thing about Pittivig, you look for the melon flavors, the dry tropical fruits, pear, papaya, banana, and then all of a sudden the sweet vanillas that will be coming in from American oak. That is Pittivig 30-year-old. But right now, let's take a closer look and taste some of the Rare by Nature bottlings from the whiskey shop. Welcome to Cragganmore, established back in 1869. This is a very unique type of distillery, mainly because it's located in Speyside. Actually, when they were putting together the special releases way back when, and that almost like the classic malts, you're looking along the lines that this was the representation of that of Speyside. Something very unique about the Cragganmore distillery is this. The wash still itself has a flat top. If you ever take a look at a still, it's got this rounded neck that goes off into the condensing tubes. But when you take a look at Cragganmore, it has a flat top. Essentially, when it evaporates out, when it's being cooked in the still, the vapors actually hit that flat top. Some will get through, but some will condense and back down into that particular wash still, which means you're pretty much going to get a second distillation even on the first distillate, which is absolutely amazing. Cragganmore is indicative of that of Speyside. It's known for its fruit flavors in that respect. And with this 20-year-old, this is the very first time it has ever been released. We're talking about something that was actually distilled back in 1999 using refill and new American oak. When you use American oak, remember that you're going to get a lot of different flavors: vanilla, honey, marzipan, coconut, almond. This is what you're going to be getting from that particular wood. So when you always look at this particular liquid or any liquid that uses American oak, you'll get these undertones. The ABV level on this, 55.8%. Remember, it is cask strength, so please enjoy responsibly. When you start taking a look at this liquid, swirl it in the glass a little bit. You got to get the oxidation going. You can open it up with a little bit of water, which will release the flavor profile. And when you actually do the inhale, when you're nosing anything, do yourself a favor, move it from side to side, because you'll find that the one nostril is a little bit more dominant than the other. So with this, I smell the sweetness coming through right off the bat. There's going to be a lot of fruit. There's a wonderful pear melon undertone of this, but the richness that you normally would get with a Cragganmore is definitely there. Take a sip. Slight little alcohol tinge at the back of the throat. Most of the sweetness is staying to the front. You're still going to get that wonderful fruit flavor, the pear, the melon, the richness, the sweetness is there. But then all of a sudden look for a little bit of dried chili near the end. Inhale and exhale. It's a beautiful liquid. This is Cragganmore 20-year-old. The Singleton series. Well, you have to take a look at what are the Singletons. Well, you have Glenord, you have Dufftown, and you actually have what is called Glendullan. Singleton is something a little bit different. Singleton goes back to, they weren't worried about how much they made. They were more worried about what they made. Which means with the Singleton series, you're going to be coming in with something along the lines of a little bit longer fermentation, which, believe it or not, adds more body. If you actually do this when you distill it at a higher temperature and a slower rate, you get a little bit more smoothness to it. This is what the Singletons are all about. This one is Singleton 17 from the Dufftown distillery. Now, they said Rome was built on 7 hills, but Dufftown stands on 7 stills. This particular distillery started in 1895. The distillate that we're trying to try right now is actually distilled back in 2002. It uses refill American hogshead barrels. Now, hogshead barrels hold about 280 liters of liquid, which equates to about 364 bottles of liquid. And you have to remember that the barrels themselves are going to breathe. They're going to inhale, they're going to exhale. That barometric pressure is going to push liquids out, but then it's going to pull things in, which are going to be flavor profiles. This particular liquid is sitting at about 55.1% ABV alcohol by volume. When we take a look at Singletons, once again being a Speyside liquid, look for the fruits. Look for the ripened fruits, look for the deep, rich fruit flavors that are going to be coming through. When we have a chance to nose this, it's light. It's melon, almost like a green melon, mild honey, a sense of floral sweetness that are going to be coming through. And now, take a sip. You can definitely sense that 55.1% ABV, but the sweetness of the melons round it off. Take the edges right out of it. All of a sudden the sweetness is right there, but the wonderful thing about this particular liquid is it's very long, intense, and a slight peppery finish. This is Singleton 17. The Talisker Distillery was established back in 1830 on the island of Skye. The only distillery on the island of Skye. You have to understand, when we take a look at this distillery, it's located on Hawk Hill. Hawk Hill has 26 springs that come together before it ventures out into the ocean. 26 springs as the base for the liquid that we're going to be trying here today. Now, Talisker is normally known for having that sea salt, that brine, the pepper, and almost the sweetness of the fruit coming through. But Talisker 8, distilled back in 2011, is using something a little bit different. Pot-stilled Caribbean rum casks. Now take a look at what we're going to be doing here. We're bringing together that sea salt and brininess, and we're going to wrap it up with the sweetness of Caribbean rum casks. Now, this particular ABV is a little bit on the higher side, almost like 57 North. It's 57.9% alcohol. Now, when we take a look at Talisker, the first thing you do, roll it in the glass, get the oxidation going, and all of a sudden, and the first thing you're going to be smelling, you're going to get that sea salt and brine coming through, that salt water that's going to be there. But all of a sudden, there's an underflow, an underwrap of sweetness coming from the molasses from that Caribbean rum casks. The citrus is there. There's a slight little peppery undertones, but it's fruited. Take a sip. Definitively Talisker. Sea salt, citrus, brininess. Inhale and exhale, and all of a sudden that sweetness of the molasses coming in from the Caribbean rum cask, giving a little bit more fruit, almost like a slight pear feeling to it all, but ends with that peppery finish. And that is Talisker 8. Lagavulin, Islay. It's located right beside that of Ardbeg and Laphroaig. Picture this, right on the edge of the waters, on the edge of the seas, with the sea salt and the brininess coming in and covering up those wonderful barrels and the wonderful taste being absorbed into those barrels. Lagavulin, that was established back in about 1816, producing back in about 1742. This particular Lagavulin 12, and any Lagavulin 12, on the special releases, on the rare by natures, have been part of the special releases since 2001, with the exception of 2002. The wonderful thing about Lagavulin 12 and the people that drink Lagavulin 12 each and every year is that it's a collectible item. It's something that people want to get. I've had people calling me now asking me when is it coming out, because they have been collecting Lagavulin 12s as a special releases ever since they came out. This Lagavulin 12 itself uses a refill American oak. Its ABV level is at 56.4%. Now, the interesting thing about Lagavulin is this. They actually fill up their wash stills about 90%. Now, most will actually fill them up between 75 and 80%. Gives a little bit of room at the very top for the vaporization to interact with that of the copper, because the copper in a still will actually remove a lot of sulfurs, but add what are called congeners and esters and flavor profiles. But by filling it up 90%, it doesn't allow a lot of that interaction. So that means a lot of sulfurs are going to carry on into that spirit still, which will give it a little bit more of a bigger, bolder flavor. And that's probably the reason why a lot of people drink Lagavulin. But when we take a look at Lagavulin 12, this year's release, we knows it, it's Lagavulin. There's a wonderful mild sense of sweetness undertone, linseed oil. There's almost a sweetness, almost like candy, but the smoke is there. It's there. This is what Lagavulin is all about. So now, take a sip. One thing that you don't get with the nose, that you do get on the palate, is the wonderful sweetness of fruits. It's still Lagavulin. The flavor is definitely there. It's long, it's dry, it's salty. It is definitely Lagavulin.